Hey, hey. Really the only thing that gon' be normal is distribution. Normal folks gon' infuse some. Optimize your lineups and you feed the rest, you mute them. Turning it up, these numbers are loud. Peeping this game from a nimbus is wild. Making it rain. While I embrace all this risk, I'm insane. Talking about that Bestball, I'm the best rest till into the next world. Guess I got next still. Bestball, I'm the best rest till into the next world. Guess I got next still. Hey, hey. Really the only thing that gon' be normal is distribution. Normal folks gon' infuse some. Optimize your lineups and you feed the
And welcome in to the Bestball Fantasy Football Podcast and live stream. My name is Bradley Stalder. You can follow me on Twitter at FFStalder. Tonight, I'm going to be jumping into a Drafters Best Ball live draft. And if you're not familiar with Drafters Fantasy, you can download the app or you can go to drafters.com, and they have an early NFL Best Ball Championship, just a $5 entry. And you can use the promo code BEST, B-E-S-T, for an extra $20 for a first-time deposit bonus. And right now, there are 9 spots in this early draft room, and we're waiting on 3. So hopefully we'll fill here in just a couple minutes. And let me share the screen so we can get into it and talk a little bit about what to expect from drafters. So this tournament here, first place, $10,000, just a $5 entry. So pretty nice at the top. $5K to second place, $2.5 to third, $1,000 to fourth. And then it goes, scroll all the way down. You double your money if you are in the top 16.5% or so of the entrance of the winners, which makes sense. It's a season-long draft, so you're going to get points weeks 1 through 17. There's no playoffs. It is total points, and you start 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, a tight end, and a flex. So this is a little bit different. It is a snake-style draft, and we've got some comments in already. Yeah, thank you. QQ already dropping in, wishing continued success. Let's go, QQ. Let's go. Lots of fun always. So if you are not familiar with drafters, make sure you're hopping in there for just $5. I know that Underdog dropped their small dollar tournament. I think it's $2 or $3, and then they also opened the big board. But unfortunately, here in Michigan, we don't have Underdog Fantasy, or at least the last I checked, and I check almost every day. So unfortunately, I'll have to wait until I get into Ohio or somewhere else that allows for Underdog Fantasy. But for right now, Drafters Fantasy, FFPC, they work in Michigan, so I'll be jumping in to those types of drafts. Let's see. Jose's jumping in. He's in 3 FFPC best ball teams. It's all my fault. You're welcome, Jose. Lots of fun tonight. This is not FFPC. It is drafters, but it looks like we have 10 spots filled. We have 2 spots remaining. So let's see if we can fill this out. I'll see if I can tweet out this link as well. Lots of fun. In the meantime, yeah, I'm gonna do a live. This is my first Drafters live best ball draft. I did a playoff draft a few weeks ago, but this is the first one for the 2023 season, and we're not going to see the results of this until September. And that's the kind of the fun thing about these drafts is we get to have players' stances, but it's also like, how much variance are you willing to embrace at this point in the season? We don't know who's going to necessarily retire. Aaron Rodgers is currently in his, 4-day quiet retreat. So maybe he'll come out and retire. Maybe he will come out and say, I want to play for the Packers. maybe he'll come out and say, trade me. Um, we will find out about Aaron Rodgers once he comes out of his dark hole. uh, Promo code. And for those who are unfamiliar with drafters, hop on, use the app, or you can go to drafters.com and use the promo code BEST, BEST, and that will give you an extra $20 in a first time deposit. And the extra $20 is 4 free entries into this best ball tournament. So I encourage you. It's a lot of fun. They pay out really quickly. One of the things that they were able to change this year was adding dark mode. And I still can't believe that there are people who play, in light mode. It hurts my eyes. That's just my takeaway. Dollars. Okay, cool. Boom. Let's go. All right, cool beans. Let's see what else is happening. We've got to refresh, and yes, we have 9 now. So some people have been hopping in, hopping out. Let's see if we can fill this room really quickly. In the meantime, I'm currently in, and they've got slow drafts. You've got slow drafts or fast drafts. I'm currently in a slow draft right now on Drafters, and I had the why did it log out? I don't know why. I had, I believe, the 3rd or 4th pick. And let me pull it up. Skip. Yeah, so I had the 3rd pick, and I took Travis Kelce with the 3rd pick overall in my slow draft that I'm doing on Drafters right now. But we're going to do a fast draft tonight. Hopefully, if we can get logged in, that would be a lot of fun. Yeah, it is all my fault, Jose, that that you're in some FFPC. I'm going to do some FFPC this offseason. I'm going to do some drafters. I'll sprinkle in a little bit of DraftKings. Maybe if I get into Ohio, I can do some underdog drafts in Ohio. But my plan for this offseason is to do a mock draft on Monday. So for those who hadn't checked out my content so far, I dropped a mock draft, an NFL mock draft, and I talked at least the first 2 rounds of it, and I talked through some players that I'm expecting to get significant draft capital, and your attitude toward how you should be treating those players. So yeah, check that out. I encourage you to see that mock draft. I've been doing mock draft Mondays, and then I'll also be doing one live draft a week is my plan. Also pumping out some player content. This past week, I dropped some Cleveland Browns reviews, talked about some Donovan Peoples-Jones and Amari Cooper and Deshaun Watson and David Njoku. Nick Chubb has quickly become one of my favorite values in these drafts. So we will see if we can get it going here. Yeah, we have 3 open spots left. I'll tweet that out. Okay, cool. Awesome sauce. So Jose is asking why Kelce in non-premium tight end format. And it's just that Kelce is so clearly in the tier above Andrews and Kittle. And some of the people, the haters, will come on and say, well, Kelce is old. He's 33. Kelce, the Kansas City Chiefs might bring in somebody. The Kansas City Chiefs are no. Let's not get carried away here. Travis Kelce, in looking at the research of tight end data, Kelce was at least a flex play 70% of the time. The next closest player among tight ends was George Kittle at 35% of the time. He was a flex play. Andrews, 31% of the time, was a flex play. So Kelsey was not only giving you elite ceiling, 57% of the time he was a top 5 tight end, but even when he wasn't a top 5 tight end, he was still giving you 12% of the time as not type 5, but at least a flex play. So that combined together gave you 70% of his weeks. And over 15 fantasy points per game in just half PPR. Kittle, the next closest, 11.4. Then Andrews at 10.3. So you would need 1.5 times Kittle to get to Kelsey. So even in the non-tight end premium leagues, there is such a significant difference between Kelsey and the next closest player. So it's pretty much Kelsey or bust in the first round. Like I like Jefferson better. I think that Jefferson offers more upside, like relative to his position, or at least comparable upside at that point. And then also, I could see arguments for Christian McCaffrey at that number 1 spot, but I'm not going out of my way to say, I could see arguments for Kelsey or Chase. I could see arguments for Kelsey or, name your next wide receiver, Devontae Adams, Kelsey or Devontae Adams, right? I could see arguments for those, but it also changes your draft strategy. If you take Kelsey in the first round, you don't have to punt tight end, and you're not forced to, do I need to take a tight end now? Do I need to take a tight end in round 7, round 8, round 9? Do I need to take a tight end in round 3? Even if Mark Andrews is a value in round 3 versus round 4, like, you're still getting top tier value from Kelsey. And not only that, but then you're able to consolidate at the tight end position. You don't have to commit significant draft capital to it. And the last point I want to make is that you can focus on the variance happening in your other positions. So attacking running back, taking a little bit more risk, a wider range of outcomes at other places because you have security at that tight end spot. And that's also the argument for if you can get Kelsey and stacking with Mahomes, then you've got Kelsey, Mahomes, and Kelsey, as I said, 70% of the time was a flex play. Mahomes was a top 5 quarterback 44% of the time this past year in 2022. And that was second only to Jalen Hurts at 57% of the time. And Mahomes was a top 10 quarterback nearly 80% of the time. So you're getting not only at the onesie positions, you can consolidate and then allow for a little bit more variance. And yes, you're losing out on draft equity at some of the running back or wide receiver positions, but the wide receiver is so widely variant. Like, to give an example of what I mean, okay, there were, let me count here, 29 different running backs. There were 29 running backs who registered in my top 5 running back percentage. There were 29. Okay, but wide receiver, among wide receivers who had at least a number greater than 0 for the percent chance that they had a top 5 week, that was 36. So there were more wide receivers who hit in that top 5 range, even if it was a very, very small amount. So you can take more shots at wide receiver because more wide receivers have a chance to at least at just 1 week, access those elite ceilings, those top 5 weeks, those week winning weeks. Like, you could have drafted a De'Ami Brown in the last round to stack, and he registered 0.3% of the time he was a top 5 wide receiver. And you're like, 0.3, not really a lot. But if you're looking at what draft capital you were considered, all you needed was 1 or 2 weeks from De'Ami Brown as a last round shot. right? And you can afford to do that if you're not needing to take late round tight ends or not needing to take a third quarterback. That's the argument for consolidation is you can attack a lot more of those like other wide receivers. To give you other examples, other wide receivers who registered at a greater than 0% top 5 rate: Devontae Parker, Nick Westbrook-Akine, Mac Hollins, Josh Palmer, KJ Osborne. Those are players that were being drafted super, super late. Same thing with Zay Jones, right? So there are players who are drafted late who can access top 5 wide receiver levels, and there's more of them. I just gave you an example of that just from this week. So Jose's following up with a question as we're waiting to fill this draft. We have currently 10 people. There are 2 spots open in this draft. It's $5 entry. So if you're watching and you want to jump into Drafters, you can go onto the app, use promo code BEST for a extra $20 for a first-time deposit. That gets you 4 free entries into this. But Jose's asking this question: would you punt tight end and draft them late if you can't get Kelsey? That's what I did with my first draft on Drafters. In this tournament, what I did, I missed out on Kelsey, and I wasn't really willing to take Mark Andrews in the early 3rd. And I think that it really just drops off. You've got a quick tier, but even the difference, like I don't think that those tight ends, the Kittles, Andrews, Hawkinsons, are really worth their draft. I think Goddard will be a nice value this year, but when it comes to the values you're getting, right, why don't you just take a late round Taysom Hill? That's just something to think about. But when it comes to punting, yes, I punted tight end in my first draft. I went Daniel Bellinger in round 17. I think I went Kincaid in round 18. I went Darnell Washington in round 19, and I went Hunter Henry in round 20. So I've got 4 tight ends, but I knew that was the strategy I was going to go with now that I didn't get Kelsey and there wasn't significant value on the other tight ends. So it looks like there's 1 spot left in this draft. If y'all want to jump in, it's going to be a lot of fun to get in there. Scott is asking, are we going to do a draft? Absolutely. We're going to get one in. We're going to get one in, Scott. We're so close. I can taste it. I can feel it. We're 1 spot away. I know it's going to happen. Yeah. So Scott's asking a follow-up question here. I saw quarterback is going very early. Do you like that or do you wait? I think if I have a stack that I'm looking to stack, then I am willing to take quarterback earlier. But if not, then I want to. It's very clear that right now there are a top 3, a big 3 per se, Scott. Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen. Those are the big 3 right now. And then moving from there, if I miss out on one of those guys, especially if I'm not able to stack, then Joe Burrow is on the list for the next tier, Justin Fields, Lamar Jackson, and then let me see about who else offhand. I'm willing to take Kyler Murray late. And then one of my favorite picks right now is Trevor Lawrence. His ADP is currently depressed, or at least it was 2 days ago when I was drafting on Drafters. Oh, and it looks like it's starting. Let's go. All right, we've got our live draft up. Excellent. It's ready to roll, and I have the 8th pick. Okay, here we go. We've got that. So it depends, but I do want to get one of those top 3 quarterbacks if they're round 3 or later. If I miss out on those quarterbacks, then I'm willing to I want to consider a double tapping of earlier quarterbacks. So like a Kyler and a Burrow, or a Justin Herbert and a Tua, or a Lamar and a Dak Prescott. like a Russell Wilson and a Joe Burrow, right? Get double tapping those quarterbacks is going to be pretty powerful, and once again consolidating. So that way you can take more shots on other plays. But it's important to have those big time quarterbacks, as I mentioned in previous live streams and podcasts. The winner, King Capital, the winner of the Bestball Mania 3 regular season most points tournament, had Joe Burrow and Jalen Hurts. He had to have both of them. And Joe Burrow contributed 120 starting points to King Capital's team. That's massive. So it makes a difference having those two stud quarterbacks instead of trying to take shots on, oh, is Sam Howell going to hit? Oh, is this player going to hit? Look, essentially, like, what is the chance that not only they hit, but they play better than your starter? And if so, your starter is probably not in a good spot. So that means your team is trash. So that's how I'm viewing it right now. Okay. So Scott, yes. Do we wait? I think you want to be a little aggressive on these quarterbacks, although a little bit less aggressive in full PPR. So I don't agree with some of these quarterbacks going in round 2 for right now. Like, I'm okay with round 3. Round 2 just feels a little rich for my blood. Jose joined. Thanks, Jose, for joining. It's going to be a lot of fun getting in there. And then Scott is going to get in maybe next week. Yeah, maybe next week. My plan is to do one of these a week. I'm not sure exactly what day, we can necessarily sneak in here, but here we are. Okay. Thanks, everyone. It's going to be a lot of fun. And of course, if you like the content, make sure you hit that red subscribe button and the likes and comment as well as we go through. Okay. I'm up next, and Kelsey already off the board, went off the board at 4. So I'm not interested in getting sniped there. Okay. So I think there's a pretty clear tier difference here in wide receivers, because Chase, Kupp are all off the board, and that leaves Tyreek Hill. We're going to take Tyreek Hill here. Stephon Diggs is there. Jonathan Taylor is there. AJ Brown, CD Lamb. But I think it's Tyreek Hill in the same tier as Chase and Kupp. Like, there's a tier drop, and same thing with the running backs. Like, as much as we want to tout Saquon Barkley did well last year, Saquon Barkley was running back 17 in top 5 rate. Like, not great. He was less than 8% of his weeks were top 5 weeks. So that's not like the elite ceiling that you want. Like, he's going to be fine if I get him in round 2, but I'm not targeting Saquon as the 8th pick overall. And maybe it's Jonathan Taylor. Maybe that's a consideration, but Jonathan Taylor had a down year last year. We'll see if he's able to bounce back with that new head coach, Steichen. So there we go. All right. Looks like Goat District is in here as well. This is going to be a pretty good crowd. Jose is in here. We've got a tough room. All right. Scott's asking, do you see Diggs falling off a little bit next season? I think there are concerns about Diggs. I mean, I have spoken already about my concerns that he's not the upside wide receiver in that same tier as Kupp, Hill, and Adams. I think there's a clear tier break between them and him, and I would just take AJ Brown and CD Lamb over Stephon Diggs. Yeah, I mean, CD Lamb was a flex play more often than Stephon Diggs this past year. And AJ Brown, my goodness, a 12.4% top 5 wide receiver rate. Okay, higher than Diggs as well. So we'll see where we go from here. Saquon's still on the board, and I'm not really going for some of the quarterbacks at these spots. We see Hurts, Mahomes, and Allen, but they're not going to come back to me. Bijan Robinson would be the running back 5 off the board. That's curious. Okay. Would I take Amon Ra over Diggs? That's a good question, Scott. Not right now. I would probably not do that right now. We're gonna go with the big dog, Derrick Henry, at this spot. Derrick Henry, look, he's gonna be 30 years old this year, and he didn't show signs of slowing down. He didn't get hurt this past year. I mean, he missed one game? One game for a running back at age 29. Not a concern at that spot. He was the number one running back in top 5 rate. 31% of the time, he was a top 5 running back when he was out there. The next closest was Christian McCaffrey at 24.3%, and then Eckler at 24.2%. So there's clearly Henry in that tier, same tier or above McCaffrey and Eckler. And you're going to get the age discount on Derrick Henry. So I'll take him at that spot. I like the upside. 75% of the time, he was at least a flex play for you. I like that floor, and especially if the offense gets a little bit better, I'm interested in Derrick Henry this year as I don't want to call him like a post-hype sleeper or anything like that, because we know what kind of big dog he is. But I think that there's going to be a lot of hate for Derrick Henry this year, and I want to be taking him at some discounts. Like, if Henry starts getting into the top 10 picks, like, I'll stay away from him. But at pick 17, I'll take the big dog, right? I'll take him happily. So I've got 2 very high upside plays so far. I'm happy with that. And as you can probably tell, I'm going to be staying away from tight end unless I get a pretty nice value. It's just that the tight end has to contribute at the tight end position in a week winning way, or else like they won't contribute in your flex spot. Like, there's only one little column for your fantasy team that the tight end can contribute to. And if they don't succeed, you're left with a big, fat, ugly 0. And that you're also competing against like a team that has Kelsey, or maybe just a random other tight end that shoots off. Like, you're hoping that you're the team that has the random tight end that shoots off. And that's not a good strategy. If you can help it. Problem is the tight end position is a pretty messy wasteland right now. So we'll see where we go from there. The Tyreek Hill pick also sets me up to be able to stack with a later Tua Tagovailoa. So we'll see how that ends up going. I have pick 32, and right now there are a couple values on the board. I'm hoping that one player sticks around for me. I would really like that. Yep. Oh, perfect. I'm going to take Nick Chubb right here. And you're thinking to yourself, Bradley, you're taking Nick Chubb at pick 32? Absolutely, I will. Nick Chubb was running back 7 in top 5 rate last year. 61% of the time, he was a top. He was a flex play for you. And I mean, pairing Henry with Chubb, that's going to be massive volume. You have to think that the Browns do bring in like a pass catching back, but maybe they don't, and they just lean more into Nick Chubb. What else do they have to lose? I like that pick at Nick Chubb at pick 32 overall, the 3.08. Okay. Yeah, that feels good. Also, we've got some mistakes in the house. We've got a double pick of Allen and Burrow here. I think that's just suboptimal at this point. Okay. Oh, man. Yeah. So one of the players that I'm avoiding at these spots is going to be Joe Mixon in round 3. I'm just not in on Joe Mixon, but we'll see what other values come to me. Like TJ Hawkinson is going here at the early to mid 4th round, and I can't get behind that. That seems too risky for me. Calvin Ridley. Wow, we've got 4 straight wide receivers going off for Bud Bowl. Wow. Okay, Goat District is up. We've got Lamb, Barkley, and Andrews off the board. Some pretty solid picks there. Andrews at the end of the third round, I could see. And then stacking with Lamar Jackson. Always got to be feeling good about that. Holy guacamole. Wowzer. Wowzer. There are some nice running backs here on the board. I really hate to be leaving them that way. We got Hawkinson and Kittle. I'm still not in on that. Oh, man. Yeah, let's go with Tony Pollard at this spot. Okay, so Tony Pollard was running back 8 in top 5 rate, 14.5%. So the way I see it, I've got 3 of the top 8 running backs in upside from 2022. Pollard, Chubb, and Henry. And now I can just let those other running backs get out. I can let those like the quarterbacks and tight ends get out. And then I can just hammer wide receiver, take some shots, see if there's a value on quarterback later on in the draft. And we'll go from there. Okay, Scott says, do you think Ridley is going way too early? I mean, beginning of the 4th round, that's an interesting question because the last 17 games we saw of Calvin Ridley, 15.4% of those games, he was a top 5 wide receiver. And in those games, including the games where he was playing poorly for Atlanta in 2021, Ridley still 60.2% of the time, he was at least a flex play. So he's contributing well. He's got first round draft capital to his name. He has a history of producing high upside numbers. He's on an offense that we saw explode relative to 2021, 2022. We definitely saw Trevor Lawrence take a step up. So, yeah, I think that Calvin Ridley is a good round 4 pick. Like Calvin Ridley or Christian Watson. Like, give me Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley or Michael Pittman. Give me Calvin Ridley. I like Calvin Ridley over some of those dusty running backs that you're getting. So consider that my thoughts. Yeah. Scott's saying it's been a year and a half since he played. I agree, but he has the whole offseason to get himself reacclimated. It's not like the Deshaun Watson situation where he had to sit out for a lot of the team drills and he couldn't practice during the season. And it was hard for him to keep in shape during the season, even after the Browns, had him play in the preseason. I think that's a different situation. And I also think that he's in a better spot in this revamped Jacksonville team than he was in a spiraling downward Atlanta Falcons offense and Atlanta Falcons franchise, back in 2021. So I have some optimism. I think that this is a fine price. I don't think he's overpriced. I don't think you're getting a discount though either on Calvin Ridley. I don't think his price is going to jump up any more than that. And we will see where we go from here. We've got some love in the some love picks here. Judy off the board, DJ Moore off the board, Javonte Williams, running back for Denver, off the board in round 5. And I'm worried about Javonte Williams. His knee injury is reportedly as bad as J.K. Dobbins's was, and we saw Dobbins lose a lot of the season Okay. So I'm very much poised to take a wide receiver. They're all teed up for me right here. And we've got Mike Williams. We've got Christian Kirk. And looking at the wide receiver data, Christian Kirk was a top 5 wide receiver 6% of the time. And Mike Williams, where did Williams go? Oh, I think I do need a pick. Let's go with Christian Kirk. because that might set me up with a stack later of Trevor Lawrence. That would be really, really nice. I did talk up Calvin Ridley, but I think those players can coexist, because Christian Kirk plays mostly out of the slot and Ridley will play outside. So I'm not as worried about that. I also think that Zay Jones will get eaten a little bit more into because of Calvin Ridley, less likely than Christian Kirk. Kirk played very, very well. Where did Mike Williams go in my Mike Williams? Yeah. So 14% of the time, Mike Williams was a top 10 wide receiver, and he was a flex play 42.7% of the time. Whereas Christian Kirk was a flex play 48.4% of the time. Okay, let me see if I can reorganize here. We saw Terry McLaurin go off the board, and McLaurin was a flex play 44% of the time last year. Yeah. Lots of fun. Yeah. Thanks for popping in, everybody. I appreciate y'all. Make sure you use the promo code BEST for an extra $20 for first-time deposit on Drafters Fantasy. I'll be doing FFPC drafts. I'll be doing drafters. I'll be doing a bunch of these live drafts throughout the offseason. So I appreciate all of you being willing to jump in. Scott points out that, yes, DeAndre Swift is a great value here in the middle of round 5. Jahmyr Gibbs goes off at the end of round 5 as well. We saw Keenan Allen, Jackson Smith and Jigba go off. And there we go. Okay, cool beans. I'll be up here in just a couple picks. And man, oh man, we've got some decisions to be made. Tyler Lockett goes off the board. Lockett, higher upside than DK Metcalf and a higher floor too. Lockett, 7% of the time was a top 5 wide receiver in 2022. DK Metcalf, 0%. Tyler Lockett, 50% of the time was a flex play. DK Metcalf, 43% of the time. So there were some major, major values. Mike Williams is also popping off the board right here. And I think we'll take some big Mike Williams. Okay, so I've got Hill, Christian Kirk, and big Mike Williams. Cool beans. Yeah, so Tyreek Hill plus Mike Williams plus Christian Kirk gives me 33% of the time falls into that wide receiver 2 category. I'll take that. I will take that. Cool. Yes, Mike Evans goes off the board. That's a nice pick. I like the Mike Evans pick here in round 6. All right. And Mike Evans was one of those wide receivers. He was wide receiver 14 in top 5 rate. So 9.5% of the time it was actually, what is that? Tied for 13th with Devonta Smith. But Devonta Smith had a higher floor. So there we go. Kyle Pitts goes off at pick 68. I know we want to draft the upside for Kyle Pitts, but give me the floor of Dallas Goedert over Pitts at this point. If we get a quarterback change, I'll change my opinion. I'm willing to do that. But as long as it's Desmond Ridder or some vestige of a bridge quarterback like Marcus Mariota, can't get behind that. Also, I want to take a step back. Can you even trust that the Atlanta Falcons are going to do what's necessary to get a quarterback? Because they draft Kyle Pitts and they draft Drake London only to not pair them with a quarterback that can elevate them as players. It just doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. So I can't get behind that. Trevor Lawrence, I was hoping would come back to me here in round 7, but it looks like he is not going to be there for me. Damian Pierce is hanging out there. Isaiah Pacheco is an interesting player that we can talk about. He came on strong in the playoffs, especially in the Super Bowl. Looking at his flex rate, Pacheco was 12% of the time at least a flex play for you, and that is 12.5 points in half PPR. That was running back 53. Okay, now that's not including the playoff games where Clyde Edwards-Helaire was not there. So I need to add, that's one thing I need to do for the players in the 2022 research. But yeah, Isaiah Pacheco is not a safe play at this point. Is not a safe play. Okay, there we go. And we're starting to see some of the rookie wide receivers go off the board and other values like Jordan Addison is obviously here. Quentin Johnson is obviously here. Yeah, I'd be very interested in taking some of these rookie wide receivers. Like Jordan Addison's projected to get first-round draft capital. Quentin Johnson as well. And Jahan Dotson is first-round draft capital wide receiver. So let's see here. I'm going to go with Jordan Addison for that wide receiver build. I've got 4 wide receivers, 3 running backs. Also, I'm really out on Evan Ingram at that price. I just can't get behind the Evan Ingram love. There's too much like variance that I'm not willing to lean into. Like Evan Ingram was tight end 8 in rate at which he was at least a flex play. And Evan Ingram was tight end 9 in rate of being a top 5 tight end. It just so happens that he was the big spike week player at the end of the season. There was the Gabe Davis syndrome. Like there is some elite talent that exists with Evan Ingram. Like he's a wide receiver playing the tight end position. But I actually don't hate like the Darren Waller. Like if I take a Darren Waller at this spot, maybe Darren Waller in round 8, that could be a nice little pick. I mean, Darren Waller, 23% of the time was at least a flex play for you in half PPR. Now drafters is full PPR, but Waller was tight end 4 in rate at which he was the flex play. So if Waller continues to fall here, I'm taking Waller at this spot just for the value. I mean, he's a full round after ADP at this point. Not worried about the age. I could use the tight end. But also Tua's hanging out here. Yeah, I think I can't pass up that value. Darren Waller in round 8 is the right spot, I think, for him. And to get him after Evan Ingram is the right pick. I think he's supposed to go after Dallas Goedert. Yeah. Pick 89 feels good for Darren Waller. That was a nice value. I usually wouldn't take him at that spot, but here we are. Let's see where Darren Waller is going in other drafts. Yeah, so Darren Waller is going at like pick 86. So on underdog. So I guess that's still after ADP. It's a nice little value. And I like the upside that he offers. Fine, I'll take it. I didn't think that I would get Darren Waller there, but here we are. Okay. So after Waller goes Cortland Sutton, Dalton Schultz, Kadarius Toney, and James Conner in round 8. That's a really, really nice value. We're also looking at some of the quarterbacks. I haven't gotten a quarterback yet. I'll probably be looking to double tap quarterback in this round, given that I don't have a quarterback. I started with Tyreek Hill, and then I went Derrick Henry, Nick Chubb, Tony Pollard, and then Christian Kirk, Mike Williams, Jordan Addison, and then Darren Waller, pick 89. Okay, we see a double tapping of Cousins and Lawrence round 7 and 8 by CJM 954. That's a nice little set there of quarterbacks. You'll probably be able to access decent enough ceilings. I mean, Kirk Cousins, nearly 40% of the time was a top 10 quarterback. Trevor Lawrence, 37% of the time was a top 10 quarterback, looking at almost 80% of the time getting a top 10 play from those guys. Cool. We see some timeouts here as we're moving on into the draft. Miles Sanders, Zay Flowers goes off the board. Tua goes off the board. That one stings a little bit. I really did want Tua, but we'll look at trying to get some round 9 and 10 quarterbacks unless some value falls. Okay. Yeah, I'm looking at some of the running backs at this spot. Rashad White, David Montgomery, and Brian Robinson are running backs that I'm hesitant to pull the trigger on at this spot in the draft in round 9. And we just see a little quarterback run going, and that's ticking me off because I need one. Yeah, yikes. Kyler Murray going off in the 9th round. Man, oh man. That stings, especially because that's his first quarterback. And we see Mahomes and Tua getting stacked there. I'm not taking, Daniel Jones, 36% of the time was a top 10 quarterback. Jared Goff, 37% of the time was a top 10 quarterback, but 22% was a top 5 quarterback. We saw some big games from Jared Goff. Okay, let's go with Goff here at this spot. And I'm probably going to have to go with another quarterback in the next round to help support Goff. So I'm looking at Goff as a more security blanket and then taking some risk with, it's a question of whether do I want risk or do I want safety? Because Geno Smith has almost no ceiling. Geno Smith, 5% of the time was a top 5 quarterback, but 50% of the time was a top 10 quarterback. And that was 6th among all quarterbacks in rate at which he was a top 10. And it was higher than Jared Goff, but Goff had a higher ceiling. So when Goff hit, he hit harder. It's just a matter of that. Now, Trey Lance is also staring at me, so we'll see if Trey Lance could be a thing. There's just a lot of projection at that. So Geno Smith does go off, and see what other quarterbacks. Maybe I can take one of those other veteran quarterbacks later. I want to attack Josh Downs in round 10. He's projected to get top 40 draft capital, and now I've got 5 wide receivers. 2 of them are rookies, but both of them are expected to be top 40 in this NFL draft. So we'll see what we can get. The Dirk Diggler drafter has Kyler Murray as his first quarterback, but Kyler is expected to miss 4 to 6 weeks into the next season. I mean, we'll see whether he progresses quicker, but man, these double tapping quarterbacks at this spot. Yikes. Maybe that was a mistake, but we'll see where it goes from here. We still have Bryce Young out there, Matthew Stafford, Derek Carr. And I think I would be willing to take a stab at Stafford at this spot. Man, the quarterback, I feel like I missed out on that spot. That's really hurting me. The Josh Downs pick, even though, I didn't think they would both double tap at that. Oh, well, you live and you learn, and you iron out these kinks at this spot. I mean, better iron them out on a $5 draft in February and think about, where could I also try to access upside later on. Carson Wentz is a player that surprisingly offered a ton of upside. 21% of the starts, or 21% of the games that Carson Wentz played in, he was a top 5 quarterback, and that was 7th among all quarterbacks. Now, 14.1 fantasy points per game is the lowest until you start getting down to Matt Ryan when you order them in top 5 rate. So Carson Wentz, certainly a scarier floor, but when he was letting it rip, was a fantasy darling for you. Okay. Ooh, we see some value popping on Zach Charbonnet. It looks like Charbonnet is projected to be a late second round pick, maybe early third round, but late second round pick. Ezekiel Elliott is still out there. Like, okay. Lee, we know what Josh Palmer is. Why are we drafting Josh Palmer in the 11th round? We know who he is. He was one among the 5 worst wide receivers with at least 85 targets in PFF receiving grade. Same thing with Donovan Peoples-Jones. Like, I'm drafting no Donovan Peoples-Jones this year. I thought he was a great value last year because he offered some levels of upside because he was getting a high A dot, and we thought Deshaun Watson would be able to give him at least a few games of good play. Problem is, even when he hit, he didn't hit very hard at all. I think he was in the wide receiver 60s of rate at which he was at least a flex play for you. So he was not doing well. Like, yeah, that's concerning for me. Yeah, give me Michael Thomas at this spot over the likes of a Donovan Peoples-Jones, over a Josh Palmer. Like, Michael Thomas offers a tremendous amount of upside, even though we have our concerns about injuries. But in a team where I have Jordan Addison and Josh Downs, who I don't expect to play a ton at the first couple games, Michael Thomas should be able to play the first couple games, right? That's what we're hoping. That's what we're thinking, is that he should be able to play those games. And if he gets hurt, well, I've got some rookies who can come back and play that way. So we'll see how it works out. But I don't mind taking round 11 Michael Thomas with what we're drafting here. Scott says, what's your overall best ball philosophy? I think there's a couple things to keep in mind is to let the board come to you. Don't force picks. I think there's also value in trying to stack players or see correlation between the success of players. Don't contradict your narrative. Like, if you're talking up one player in your draft, like, talk up correlating pieces as well. Like, if one player succeeds, the other players should be succeeding. Or if you pick them for a reason and you think that the other player is not, then you don't want to go back and forth. Okay. You don't want conflicting narratives in your draft. Like, stick to one narrative, because if things go right with that narrative, it'll hit stronger. I think that individual player takes can vary in success. It's hard to nail those specific takes, though. You're thinking to yourself, oh, I definitely know how this player is going to be. No, we don't. No, you don't. But you try to get an idea of how they will do based on the stats that they perform, based on the offensive production. And I'm on the clock. And looking at who is still on the board, one of my favorite round 12 picks, gosh darn it. Man, oh man. One of my favorite round 12 picks is running back Antonio Gibson. Just the amount of upside that he offers is outstanding. Antonio Gibson, 25% of the time was at least a flex play for you last year. And that was even with Brian Robinson handling 15 touches in 10 different games. Antonio Gibson, yes, he didn't get a massive ceiling, but we've seen ceiling, at least running back 2 types of consistent ceiling for Antonio Gibson before. Gibson was a higher flex rate player than Najee Harris, A.J. Dillon, Donta Foreman, Khalil Herbert, Jarek McKinnon, Rashad Penny, even Brian Robinson, a higher flex rate. He wasn't hitting those top 5 or top 10 weeks, but he was a pretty consistent flex play. So for him to be my running back 4, happy with it. I hadn't touched running back since, and I probably will only draft, these 4, maybe a 5th one as we move forward. And now they're starting to look at some quarterbacks, and I'll hopefully get one of Stafford or Carr coming back. But Stafford goes off the board. So maybe Carr or like Mac Jones might be an interesting later pick. Anthony Richardson might be a very interesting pick. Ryan Tannehill should be the starter for Tennessee. Odell Beckham in round 12. That's an eyebrow raise. Not in an Odell Beckham at that spot. All right. Ben R asked, what's my favorite rookie running back value? Yeah, Charbonnet looks to be a decent value at these spots. I think when it comes to running back value for the rookies, like if you're not going these power running backs and you're going 0 RB, like just take a flurry of these projected round 3, round 4 running backs, like a Kane and Charbonnet and or some other rookie running backs, Tyjae Spears, Sean Tucker, Tank Bigsby, Dwayne McBride, Kendre Miller, Kenny McIntosh, right? Rashawn Johnson, Israel Abikanda, okay, Deuce Vaughn, like just taking Ibrahim, like taking shots on these running backs very late at a value is, I think, the way to go, because we don't know the draft capital and landing spot. If anything, in my opinion, landing spot for the rookie running backs can weigh more heavily than landing spot for wide receiver in the first year or 2 of their career. Like landing spot will affect the wide receivers as well. But when it comes to immediate impact, we saw an immediate impact from Tyler Algier because of his landing spot. He was a decent enough player who didn't get great draft capital, but his landing spot was chef's kiss. He was only competing with Cordarrelle Patterson, who got injured, and that opened the door for Algier to prove that he was a capable back. Sometimes these running backs just don't get a shot, don't get a chance. So that's how I'm viewing it right now, is like when it comes to what kind of value are we getting, just take some very late rookie running backs if you're going 0 RB strategy. Okay. Yep, Derek Carr is there. I think he signs. He's going to be the starter somewhere. And Derek Carr, looking at some of the stats, Derek Carr, 30% of the time was a top 10 quarterback, and that was even with some of the bad offensive schemes that were in place, or just maybe not bad, but just didn't fit with what Derek Carr was doing. He's certainly not like a high upside, but he's an okay-ish floor type of quarterback. I mean, I said 30% or so was his spot. And Derek Carr, so in the same range as like Russell Wilson last year. Okay, better than Ryan Tannehill. Better than Tom Brady, though, at top 10 quarterback rate. So I've got Carr and I've got Goff. I probably am going to have to take like an Anthony Richardson late. We'll see. Where's Anthony Richardson's ADP? Yeah, 209. So I'll probably look at Richardson in like round 16 or 17. So I'll keep that in mind as I'm moving forward, because I like the possibility of rushing upside with Richardson as a nice little dart throw pick there. Okay, so we've seen Damian Harris go off the board, Singletary, Hodgins, Kane. I feel like this is a slightly off-brand team for me for right now. I think I'm going to have to reclaim some upside picks here. Tyquan Thornton looks like a nice upside pick. Oh, he just goes off. Rashid Shaheed. could be a nice little pick. Michael Gallup. I think Gallup has a bounce back year this year for Dallas. As we know, wide receivers coming off the first year of the ACL tear, that's never going to be a good thing. And he was a fade for me last year, but I think he does have a bounce back potential. And I get sniped on Michael Gallup. No surprise there. Okay. We'll keep scrolling down, seeing if there's some other values. Maybe. Yeah, I'm looking at the wide receivers. Shaheed. We've got 10 seconds, and looks like the wide receivers are pretty picked through. We'll go Rashid Shaheed here. That might stack well with my Derek Carr in round 13. I mean, we'll see. But Rashid Shaheed showed off some interesting numbers despite only playing a few games with over 60% snaps. Shaheed, 8.7% of the time was at flex play, but 3.5% of the time got at least 15.2 fantasy points. So maybe with improved quarterback play, with a more consistent set of reps and playing in the preseason, knowing that he's either going to be the number 2 or number 3, that could work out pretty nicely for Rashid Shaheed. Scott's asking, do you ever take into account future opponents in best ball, as we know who teams are playing, but not when? At this point, no, because we don't, as you mentioned, we don't know when those players are going to be playing, because we also have to think divisional matchups. Sometimes teams will play a lot of their division mates at the beginning of the season. Sometimes they'll play, weeks 15, 16, and 17 are all divisional matchups. And then you're like, well, how heavily can I weight those? Plus, what I found is not just me, but everybody in the industry, there are very few who are good at predicting how good defenses are in defending against, a defense is good against running backs, or defense is good against quarterbacks. And we have a general sense, a range of, we know Buffalo is going to usually be pretty decent. But we saw stars on Minnesota not play well this year, and them be one of the worst defenses against wide receivers and passing quarterbacks. So no, I think that there's I'm not going to weight too heavily right now. At this point, we're drafting February 15th, right? It's the day after Valentine's Day. So no, I'm not keeping those too heavily in mind there, Scott, at this point. Because we don't even know when bye weeks are either. I mean, that's, I think, along the similar vein question is, do I take bye weeks into account? And not super heavily, especially in February. Okay. Ooh, a Jalen Warren type could be really nice here. Cordero Patterson could be nice here. Trey McBride had a couple nice games. And if Zach Ertz is still recovering, I think I'm going to go with Jalen Warren as my 5th and final running back, because I went power running back here. So I'm not expecting Jalen Warren to be, a significant contributor. But now I'm going to look at some tight ends that could offer some upside. I already mentioned I took Daniel Bellinger in previous drafts. Mike Gesicki is going to be a nice little pick. Jelani Woods offers some nice upside. Yeah, let me look at some of the tight end percentages. Z to A. Jelani Woods, 10% of the time was a flex play in games that he played in last year. Let's see. There's some, I want Kincaid to be thrown in there. Did Isaiah Likely already go off? He did in round 14. Okay. Jake Ferguson is an interesting play. Darnell Washington, Irv Smith, of course. Conklin Okugbunam came out and said in all the few words that he was surprised that he wasn't playing a lot under Coach Nathaniel Hackett. So it could be that he gets a second chance under Sean Payton, an athletic tight end. We'll see here. We're in round 16. I have 2 quarterbacks. I'm definitely going to be looking to get that third quarterback. So Anthony Richardson, who's been getting a lot of hype as a top 10 draft capital quarterback. Same thing with Will Levis. Like if Will Levis drops in this draft, I might consider taking him. Yeah, Juwan Johnson. So Scott asked about Juwan Johnson, and Johnson is showing up as a wide receiver here in drafters. So I'm avoiding Juwan Johnson because Juwan Johnson was only a flex play 11.1% of the time. Okay. And if he falls into the wide receiver category, that's not very optimal. Okay. But look, Allen Robinson is here. Devontae Parker is here. I've got some wide receiver options, but I think I'm going to go with the quarterback that I've been chatting up about, and that's Anthony Richardson. Richardson, among the best quarterback PFF rushing grades, and had a better PFF passer grade than Will Levis, had a better big time throw rate his senior year or his final year than Levis. So I'm not in on Levis this year. I mean, maybe he offers some rushing upside. He does have a big arm, but I'd take a dart throw on Anthony Richardson instead of saying, well, Will Levis, he just has too many. I just think he has too many red flags for right now. That's how I'm approaching Will Levis at this point. Okay, so we've got some really nice wide receiver values and also some tight end spots as well. I'm all set at running back. I can take maybe 2 more tight ends, maybe one. We'll see. Did Jelani Woods go off? I think Jelani Woods or Bellinger are going to be interesting picks for me. Yeah, if I can get Jelani Woods. Bellinger, though, where did he even fall? Yeah, 0% of the time was scored at least 12.5 points in half PPR. Whereas Jelani Woods had a higher rate than Kyle Pitts last year, had a higher rate than Gerald Everett last year, had a higher rate than Hunter Henry. Henry I like as a really, really late tight end pick in these drafts. Higher than Higbee, higher than Tunyon, higher than Conklin. That's Jelani Woods at rate at which he was getting 12.5 PPR fantasy points. Jelani Woods, though, goes off. CJM takes him. That stinks, but okay, here we are. And then I can just take some later wide receivers as well. Okay. So I'm not in love with my quarterback room, but they might be able to hold me off. I like my wide receiver room, the type of upside that it offers. Darren Waller was a nice little value at pick almost 90 in the 8th round. And then my running back room, I'm very, very proud of. That's what's going to get me through, I think. So there we go. Because I think the flex is going to come from the running back room. And then I just need 3 wide receivers to hit out of probably going to be 8 or 9. So we'll go from there. Okay. Look at the wide receivers. And like we see Devontae Parker, Allen Robinson, Isaiah McKenzie there. Are there any day 2 wide receivers? Yeah, Nathaniel Dell is projected to be a day 2 wide receiver. There's other nice day 2 wide receivers that we could take. Laviska Shenault's on my radar very late. Ooh, Bellinger goes off. That stinks. Let's see. Are there any other tight ends that I'd like to take at this spot? No. Okay. I think we're going to go with some Allen Robinson We'll see if he can have a bounce back. Someone put out that Allen Robinson had like the most space or was given the most cushion on his targets, and someone tweeted back and said it didn't matter when he didn't play well. But like at the end of the 17th round, you're just trying for upside at this point. And Allen Robinson was a flex play 23% of the games he played, which is better than Adam Thielen. It was better than Drake London last year. It was better than Cortland Sutton or Deebo Samuel. It was better than Paris Campbell or Treylon Burks. Like, yes, Allen Robinson was injured and didn't play well, but I think a lot of that was colored by the fact that he was being drafted in like the 5th round last year. So to get him in the 17th round, fine, I'll take a flex play like a quarter of the time. That's just what I need from him at that spot. It's a good value. It's a good value. Okay, now I've got to start thinking about some other tight ends, as I've seen Bellinger and Ferguson. Now Cade Otton goes off. Okay, we see some Darnell Washington's there. Kincaid, probably going to go Kincaid here as the highest graded receiving tight end in this draft class, over Michael Mayer even. So I don't know why Mayer is going to go 2 rounds ahead of Kincaid, especially since Kincaid has been mock drafted a lot in the 1st round. So we'll see. But I feel like I'm going to be drafting a lot of Kincaid if I don't get Travis Kelce like in the 1st round. I'm getting a nice little discount for Darren Waller. Okay, so Kincaid is there. Musgrave is there. Yes, I'm going to go Kincaid as my tight end 2. Draft, boom. And then I'll probably draft one more. Yes, I will probably draft one more tight end in these last 2 rounds, and probably one more wide receiver as well. Looking at the wide receiver room, I mean, Juwan Johnson is staring out at me. Problem is that he's listed as a wide receiver here. Yikes. I don't know if I can do that. Nathaniel Dell is staring at me. He's probably going to get round 2 or round 3 draft capital. Let me look at a few other wide receivers. Take some deep shots, because I'm all set at running back. Like if those running backs don't come through for me, then my team is done for. So yeah, just scrolling through, seeing if there are any others that are popping off the page for me. Yeah, I don't see. I wish you could just sort by rookie. I don't think that that's a capability here on Drafters. So, hey, Drafters guys, if you're watching, see if you can add a rookie filter. Okay, cool. Reset to default order. Okay, cool. So that's where we're at. Maybe some Corey Davis late. Talking about Corey Davis as a late pick. Davis, 14% of the time was a top, or scored 12.5 PPR fantasy points. That was ahead of Russell Gage, ahead of Wan'Dale Robinson, ahead of Donovan Peoples-Jones, ahead of Darius Slayton and Isaiah McKenzie. So, I mean, Corey Davis, round 19, there are worse picks, I suppose. Okay, we see Pierre Strong going off round 19. That's not a bad pick. And maybe we take some Darnell Washington. I feel like I'm taking a lot of him already. Whatever. Russell Gage, really, really late. Like he signed to the Bucks, and we know that Chris Godwin is a free agent and probably going to sign elsewhere because he was franchise tagged, and I don't know if the Bucks are willing to do that anymore. Let's look and see what other tight end possibilities are out there. Hunter Henry's staring at me. He's always an upside tight end. Foster Moreau, Brock Wright, Tyler Conklin. Yeah, let's go with Tyler Conklin. Conklin had a nice little season last year. Had some spike weeks. In fact, Tyler Conklin, 5% of the time, was a top 5 tight end. That was 5.2% of the time. That was higher than Dawson Knox, higher than Gesicki, higher than Kyle Pitts. That was Tyler Conklin, tight end 15 in upside last year. Okay, so I'm all set at tight end, and then I'll probably take one more wide receiver. So I go a 3-5-9-3 build. Nathaniel Dell is still staring at me with that possible day 2 draft capital. Okay, yeah, well, we're winding it up. This has been a lot of fun. I appreciate all of you jumping in on this live stream. And if you're new and you like the content, you find it helpful, you want to support the channel, hit that red subscribe button. I've been working very, very hard. As you can tell, I'm over 700 subscribers since the start of the NFL season. So, guys, this has been a real pleasure drafting with y'all and chatting with you, sharing my thoughts and my process as I'm going through and thinking through what players I could be taking shots on. And Nathaniel Dell is right there. Tank Dell. That's going to be my team right there. So Jared Goff, Derek Carr, Anthony Richardson are my quarterbacks. Henry, Chubb, Pollard, Gibson, Warren, running backs. Tyreek Hill, Christian Kirk, Mike Williams, Jordan Addison, Josh Downs, Michael Thomas, Rashid Shaheed, Allen Robinson, Nathaniel Dell at wide receiver, and Darren Waller, Dalton Kincaid, Tyler Conklin at tight end. All right, everyone. Make sure if you like the content, you find it helpful, and you want to join in on some of the drafters drafts, use the promo code BEST, BEST, for Best Bell Fantasy, right? So put in the promo code BEST on drafters, and they'll give you a $20 additional with a first-time deposit. And that's 4 free entries to this early Bestball draft tournament where the winner gets 10 grand. All right, everyone. It's been a pleasure. Until next time, good luck in the Bestball streets.
I embrace all this risk, I'm insane. Talking about that best bell, I'm the best till into the next world. Guess I got next still. Best bell, I'm the best till into the next world. Guess I got next still.